Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino, that's Gino here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today, I'm sorry to say we murdered someone. We killed someone. We slayed the princess, and it was good. We saved the land. And joining me, as always, to talk about video game murder, Pete Busby. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? If there's a good time to indulge murder, I guess it's video games and when saving the world, and they just happen to overlap on this one.
Yep, and no moral quandaries, which is great.
None at all. Straightforward, nice and simple, old school gaming. But this week's fun fact is filed again under ones that aren't necessarily fun, but are interesting.
But are facts.
Yeah, but are. So this one comes from BBC Science Focus. I'm not going to read the headline. I'm just going to dive right into it. It's very short, and I think the whole thing is interesting. So here we go. Despite being around 5 meters tall, giraffes are very unlikely to get struck by lightning. But this is mainly because lightning and giraffes are both fairly rare. There are only 5 well-documented fatal strikes on giraffes between 1996 and 2010. With a global giraffe population of around 140,000, this is about 0.003 deaths per 1,000 giraffes per year. That's a very low risk, but it's still more than 30 times the equivalent fatality rate from lightning in humans in the U.S.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess just getting struck by lightning, period, really low chance, even if you're a giraffe. Huh.
Do the giraffes get struck by lightning and survive, and that's why they're such a low death rate?
It only indicated fatality rates, not non-fatal strikes of giraffes.
So I guess we'll never know.
I have some follow-up questions, Pete,
Sure.
which I'm sure you're capable of answering.
Oh, 100%.
One, do we know how many giraffes were struck by lightning and survived and attained superpowers?
I'm assuming 0. I feel like we would have heard about that.
Okay, follow-up question.
Sure.
The giraffes that were struck by lightning and killed, how the hell did we figure out they were killed by lightning?
That's a great question, too. I was just thinking of that. My only guess is, like, we were just watching them, and somebody was like, oh, God, that giraffe.
Well, I mean, if you find a dead giraffe and it has lightning scars, it probably got struck by lightning.
Yeah.
I mean, we can tell when people are killed by lightning, because there's a very distinctive, like, it looks like you got zapped by lightning.
Sure, but sometimes it's, static shock or electro.
Okay, sure.
Or giraffes chewing on power lines.
Yeah, exactly. Just this giraffe connected 2 ends of a battery together with its tongue, and then. Zzz.
Do you know
Okay.
Do you know giraffe tongue facts?
They're very long.
They're very long.
Black
they're,
or
they're
purple or something?
bluish. Yeah.
Blue.
They're very kissable.
Oh.
They also hum to each other. I've used that one before on the podcast.
Oh.
Yeah, and their tongues. I think their tongues are pretty tough. They can like eat leaves off of trees with thorns.
Yes.
With their tongue.
Okay, that's all of our giraffe facts. I don't think we know anymore.
I think we had a giraffe fact once about giraffes vomiting
Oh. Well, that's not
previously
fun.
and how long it would take.
Yeah.
But that's not fun. That person who's disgusted that you hear, that's M. Palladino, the mistress of games herself. How you doing, M?
Hello. This was my pick, and while we discussed in the Discord that it is not Yuri and it is not passing the Bechdel test, I think it still likes women, which we'll discuss. So
Yeah, I don't think it would pass any tests.
I don't think
really.
so.
Any such tests. There's really not that many characters, all told. Or
No.
it's more that it's the same characters over and over again, but we'll get into it. All right, before we get into the discussion of Slay the Princess, not related to Slay the Spire, by the way. If you came here thinking this is a sequel to Slay the Spire, you're going to be disappointed.
You're wrong.
We're going to do our normal plugs. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens@libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/deeplistens. I put up the new OG Soncast tier for the people who want in on the anime podcast. So there's a new $3 tier, $3 a month tier that will get you access to that podcast, which, Pete, you're trying to coordinate with ZP and Braden on the next one. Do we know which anime it is yet?
We do not. We are in discussions. If you have votes, please send them through the Discord. We haven't settled on one just yet.
Yes. So if you're already at a $3 or more contribution, just go onto Patreon and adjust your tier to make it easier for me to give you the thing you already are paying for. And if you haven't joined yet, go ahead. Hit the $3 tier. That lets you put a game off the deep end slush pile. It'll give you a monthly access to the anime podcast when it starts coming out, which will be soon. The OG Soncast, which is a great name for this podcast, I have to say.
I'm shocked that that's not taken already somewhere.
I haven't seen it. Google it. I haven't seen it.
Okay. That might be a good spin-off. We start our own, continuing OG Soncast. No, it just links to us. That's shocking.
Yeah.
Wow.
We
How
got
about
that.
that?
We got to trademark it.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's really good.
It is. It's way better than Deep Listens. What if we just changed the whole podcast to OG Soncast? Nope. We're not doing that yet. But yeah, just other things you get if you join the Patreon, you'll get access to the Discord where you can talk to the host of the show. You can hear about upcoming things. You can watch streams. There's such a big community. So go ahead and join. And if you were to post on there, you might end up on the Discord report.
The Discord report. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop. This week on the Discord, we had a very rare occasion. Me and Gino hung out.
That's true.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. I mean, we worked in the same place, so I mean, we know each other. But yeah, there was a picture of us in the Discord. Gino came down to New Haven, and we got some lunch.
Yeah.
And that was a nice time.
It was Vietnamese
I
food,
hope
right?
you also... Yes.
It was good.
I hope you also thought it was a good time.
It was a good time. I got to meet your wife. I got to meet Harley, a frequent Discord poster.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet everyone in person. It was fun.
Yeah, got to meet our cats who
I
made you
patronized.
allergic.
I patronized a local card shop that you frequent. It's just great.
I work at. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good. Maybe you too can visit me in my home if you join the Discord.
Just a disclaimer: M's address is not in the Discord.
Yes.
Do not
Smart.
think that it is.
Good policy.
Although if that gives us $1, maybe it is in there. You gotta dig around. Other
Take the
things.
first letter of every post from the last month.
That would be wild. Other things in the Discord. It's United States election season again.
It is. And we cordoned
unfortunately.
off that stuff. We cordoned it off into its own little thread. So if you don't want to see it, you don't have to. But if you do want to see it, we sure do post in there a lot more than I thought people would.
It's banging in there. Probably because it's a hellscape out there.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's popping off. If you want to hear what we think about J.D. Vance, if you want to see some
Normal human man.
yeah,
Yeah, totally normal dude. Nothing weird about him.
Yeah, nothing strange going on over there. If you want to see a lot of unrelated pictures of couches, you'll find it possibly
In that thread.
Holy shit.
What?
There was just the loudest thunderclap I've ever heard outside.
Oh, your microphone did not pick it up.
Oh, okay.
wow.
Well,
But I hope that nothing got struck. Speaking of lightning strikes,
Speaking of lightning strikes, Are there any giraffes in the vicinity?
I mean, none that I know of. I could check.
Thank goodness.
Do you
Yeah.
think we could just like make them like a fainting goat, like a sacrificial giraffe that you just have in every neighborhood that just
Like
draws
instead of-
aggro from lightning?
Instead of metal lightning rods, you just put like giraffes on the roof.
Giraffes.
Hmm.
Yes.
And then one of them will get superpowers. Hmm.
Yes.
And wreak its bloody revenge.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
yeah, that is going on. I visited the world's first Chipotle.
Hmm.
Posted
The
about
world's
that in the Discord.
first Chipotle.
Yeah.
They have a very
in
stupid
Colorado.
sign outside of it.
Is
Yeah.
it like a regular Chipotle, or is it like a Mexican restaurant that eventually became Chipotle?
No, it is a Chipotle. It is
Okay.
just like a regular one. The things that make it distinct are the plaque outside. Em, do you have the picture of the plaque in
Yes.
front of you?
Uh,
What does it say?
Imagine what looks like a very official-looking like national monument plaque, except in the place of where like a seal would go, it says Chipotle. You know, the Chipotle logo. And then it says the original Chipotle, where a revolution wrapped in foil began. Estimated July 13th, 1993. So that is. I thought that felt in bad taste, but
A little
it-
too grandiose for Chipotle.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Chipotle,
it's not
so
good
maybe it
taste.
wasn't good taste in bad taste.
I will say the difference, Pete, between it and a regular Chipotle, the menu is now the same. It is the same as the corporate menu. There's no difference in the food, but they have been allowed to keep some older branding.
Hmm.
So they still have kind of like the older sign
Okay.
on the building instead of the new kind of brown with the pepper logo that's on the newer buildings. But the
Have
interior is pretty much the same.
Gotcha. Have they maintained the old classic portion sizes, or are they downsizing like all these other worthless Chipotle?
I don't know what the original size was. If it's not what it is
Or-
now.
I think
Was
they're
more?
shrinkflating us.
Okay.
I can't say for sure, but chatter is we're being shrinkflated.
Okay. I will say for my part, I am at 5'10", 5'11"-ish, 175-ish pounds. I was very full after eating
Okay.
a single burrito.
Okay.
I did not need more food. I did have ice cream afterwards, but I didn't need to. That was bad. I shouldn't have done that.
Live your life, Gino.
Mistakes were made.
And a related thing to heading over to M's, I passed on my way there the World Wrestling World Wrestling Entertainment building in Stamford, Connecticut.
That is over there.
It is. Boy, their building's so much bigger than it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be in a crappy little office building, and now they took over one of the biggest skyscrapers in Stamford, and I don't know how they did it.
And you can see it from the highway. It's very. They pointed the sign so everyone passing by could see it.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. So you can see the picture of that building from that I took from the train. But yeah, and then there's a bunch of video game talk because it's a video game Discord. So get in there if you want to see that. All right, without further ado, let's discuss Slay the Princess. Em, you picked it. What is it?
Okay, hold on. I gotta find the exact quote. Opens this. You're on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin, and in the basement of that cabin is a princess. You're here to slay her. If you don't, it will be the end of the world. So, that pretty much
Yeah.
says everything you need to know about it.
Yeah, that's all you need to know. It's made by Black Tabby Games.
Mhm.
It is. Would you describe it? I think as an adventure game.
I would say this is kind of a visual novel.
Text
Somewhat
adventure sort of thing.
text
kinda?
adventure.
Yeah, like a dialogue tree. Yeah.
hmm I'm sure ZP will have some words for us about calling it a text adventure when that is something else, I think, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I guess visual novel works. Like it's you are basically being presented with a bunch of dialogue choices, and each dialogue choice will either just give a line and you stay where you are, or it will advance the plot in some way. So First question: did everyone get the good ending first?
Not first.
Okay. Neither did I.
I mean, if I'm thinking, I got an ending that seemed okay. I don't know if there are better ones.
Okay, there's one ending that says you got the good ending, so
Oh,
Yeah.
I got probably
you would
not
know if you got that one.
It comes with a Steam achievement, the good ending.
that. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's a text adventure. You are placed, as you just described, kind of the very opening narration is what you read. You are a character who just goes by, I guess you're just the
hero.
The hero is your first internal voice. And we're going to spoil the heck out of this because there's no way to not
Yeah, it's all plot.
talk about this game without spoiling it. You can do a single run of this game in like 5 to 10 minutes for the good ending, if that.
If you don't want to be spoiled on it, I do recommend playing this one sight unseen.
Yes, please do. Please, stop listening to this. Go play it. It'll take you like an hour or two to get an ending, depending on how quickly and thorough or how thorough you want to be.
And then immediately resume listening to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just pause it right here. We'll be fine. You go ahead.
And
We'll
also,
talk
like,
amongst ourselves.
maybe delete the show and re-download it a few times, goose the numbers, if you want to. Rate and review. You are dropped on a path, and there's a narrator who just goes by the narrator. And the narrator tells you there's this cabin, there's a princess in it, you got to go kill the princess. At which point you're given like a significant number of questions that you can ask the narrator.
Yes.
Pete, what was your first inclination?
I had a lot of follow-up questions. Mostly, I wanted to know why I needed to kill this princess.
Because she's kind of the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wasn't too concerned with like, okay, like if you explain why, I'll go kill her. The act itself wasn't too top of mind for me.
Yeah, you can ask a bunch of questions like, why is the princess in a basement? Did you think the princess might end the world because she's trapped in a basement? Who are you? Who put her there? Where am I?
Good. Who put her there? And he just goes, people put her there. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not important.
And
very
the narrator,
cagey, this narrator.
Very cagey, does not like answering your questions, doesn't think you should really be asking them.
Yeah. No. If you are familiar with the Stanley Parable, kind of a...
You should be. We had an episode on it.
Yes. You remember that one, right? Of course. Go listen to that one. Pause this here. Go listen to that one, and then come back.
Okay, wait. Before you listen to that one, you need to first pause this one, then download that one, pause that one, play the Stanley Parable, listen to that one, play Slay the Princess, listen to this one, delete those episodes, re-download them a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There
you got a lot of homework this episode.
Yeah, this is a big one. So kind of the same vibe from the narrator as the narrator in the Stanley Parable. Does not seem to want to be here. If you ask too many questions, starts getting annoyed at you. Kind of not doesn't seem like he's on the level.
No, does not.
Yeah, something's up about that guy. Maybe we'll find out.
There's a weird level of like omniscience to the narrator too. Like the narrator knows more than we do, but doesn't necessarily know everything that's going on. It's sort of like a third-person semi-omniscient narrator. It's interesting.
Yeah, the narrator knows. So early on, there's you, the character who is making choices. There's the narrator, and then there's the hero. And the hero can kind of talk to the voice concerns that you then make decisions based on. The narrator can hear all internal dialogue, basically. And let's just say maybe you end up with more voices in your head than just the hero. And the narrator can hear the voices in your head talking and respond to them. So did everyone go to the cabin?
Yes.
Sure. Didn't have much choice.
Once you get to the cabin, you do have a choice on whether you go to the cabin. You can leave or try to. Once you go to the cabin, there is a dagger that you can pick up or not, and there's a stairwell that goes into the basement. What did you go with first?
I picked up the dagger. I wasn't committed to using it yet, but I just thought, better to have it and not need it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like a bad idea to begin with, to pick up the dagger. Except then you go down there and she sees you have a dagger sometimes, if you don't hide it. Yeah, I think the first time I didn't pick it up. I'm trying to remember the very first run I did. There were many runs after that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the first time I did not pick it up because I was like, I'm going to go and talk to her.
I'll reason with this princess. She probably doesn't actually want to destroy the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked up the dagger and was like, okay, this guy's telling me I shouldn't talk. Like, the narrator keeps telling you, she's going to try and trick you. She will end the world. Don't talk to her. Don't give her an opportunity to trick you. Just go stab her. So I believe I didn't talk to her. And so I walked up, and you get, a bunch of dialogue options to try and talk to her or talk to the narrator. And I believe I just kind of walked up and stabbed her
Mhm.
for my first run. But then after you stab her, there are dialogue options that are like, she's dead. Surely that can't be it. And I think I picked the more cautious, like, surely that can't be it option. And then the princess got up and stabbed me.
Yep.
And
Yeah, she
and then we
wasn't.
died.
Surprisingly, she wasn't too happy with you for stabbing her.
No. And it should be said too. I mean, not super important, but I'll point it out. The princess is designed to be a prototypical damsel in distress to begin with.
Mhm.
Nice flowing hair, pretty dress, very big, sort of innocent eyes, until she
Very
gets up
big.
and stabs you.
Very, very big eyes.
Yep.
There's an art style at work here where the eyes are gigantic.
Most definitely. After you stab the princess,
Yes.
or the princess stabs you,
What happens?
what happens, Pete?
You die. But
That's a bummer.
Yeah,
Game
you
over,
do.
huh?
yeah, that's it. I mean, like we said, it's a very short game.
Mhm.
You die, but then you restart. You just find yourself back at the beginning in front of the cabin in the woods, and you and your inner monologues, depending on how many you have, are aware that you've restarted. The narrator, however, seems unaware, or at the very least is in denial. Doesn't want to admit it.
Yes. And by the time you get to a second run, depending on how you died and what happened to you, you will have at least one new voice in your head. If, say, for example, you tried to romance the princess in your first run, you will have a character who is smitten with the princess. If you killed the princess and she killed you back, you'll have someone who's more cautious and wary in your head. You could have a skeptic in your head. You could have someone who's a complete doomer, just like completely depressed, like, oh God, what's going on, sort of person in your head. You could have a nihilist in your head. And depending on how things go, you can get more or less of these voices kind of having dialogue about every single thing you're doing. What did you think of this turn of events, Sam? What did you make of it at first?
Well, I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be as simple as, just one chapter of killing the princess. And then having the voices that are introduced was an interesting development. You're sort of slowly, like, developing these alternate takes. Uh, some of them, uh, some of them more on the money than others. I know that I think it's the skeptic, or yeah, the skeptic would say stuff like, "I don't trust the narrator." You're like, you know what? I don't trust the narrator. And if you play through and then you get that voice, you're like, wait, I think this guy is like actually correct about everything. So there were things like that. There's I think I got the paranoid first, because
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting backstabbed, I think. So I don't know. I was like, well, let's get back in there. Let's try it again. And I don't remember what I did second. Hold on. There are extensive Steam achievements, so I'm going to look at my achievements in order so I know which ones I did first. Oh yeah. When you die, you get the real Slay the Princess starts here, and then things get weirder. Then the second time I was like, okay, that first time was fucked up, because we ended up, like, I think she stabbed me the first time, and then the second time I stabbed her, and then I was like, you know what, third time's the charm. I remember I stabbed her. She remembers she stabbed me, I think. Only the narrator seems to be, like, not clear on the details.
Yeah, because the narrator keeps insisting that this is the first time you two have met.
Yeah, but then when you get down there and the princess is like, oh, it's you again, the narrator's like, oh, well, I guess that you're right. And
It's
admits
also
it.
the interior of the cabin is also different.
Yeah,
That's what really got me sort of thinking about things. Like, depending on how each run ends, the cabin and the path to it will be different. Sometimes it's super big. Sometimes it's like a gross flesh tunnel.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just full of splintered wood.
Mm.
Depends what you get.
Sometimes it's many dimensions layered on top of each other over and over and over again forever.
Very
Standard
telling.
cabin stuff.
Very telling about some of the routes that we explored.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we should probably talk about, like, the second time through, there's always a mirror in the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can see the mirror, the narrator can't. And every time you try to approach the mirror and touch it, it will vanish in front of you. At least every time I tried. I don't know if anyone had a time where the mirror stuck around.
Did you mention that the narrator can't see it?
Yes. Narrator can't see it, you can. Mm-hmm. And interacting with it causes it to go away.
Yep.
And then, Pete, what was your favorite? So I don't feel like we need to go over every one of these outcomes, because most of these runs, like I said, are only a few minutes each, but they're all pretty darn distinct and interesting. So which princess made the biggest impression on you?
So I think the one that got me the most was Blade Princess.
Yeah.
So there's a point where the princess, like, looks normal and you're just sort of talking to her, and then all of a sudden you're stabbed. You're like, oh my goodness, where did that knife come from? And turns out it just erupted from the middle of her thigh. Like, the princess now, instead of bones, I guess, has blades, and she can control them at will. So, like, later on, she can also rip off her arms, and now she has swords for arms. And my assumption was this was a reference to the science fiction classic Hyperion. In that book, there's a time-traveling metal, like, 7-foot-tall blade man called the Shrike, who just impales people on his blade tree. So I assume that's what they were going for. If not, Blade Princess is always a nice motif. We're all familiar with the canon of Blade Princess.
Yes, and so Blade Princess kills you a bunch of times, and eventually you just keep respawning or reconnecting as she's killing you, and you keep getting more and more voices in your head as she's cutting you to ribbons over and over. Until you eventually get, like, a final run, and you have almost every possible voice in your head. And when you go to visit her, this time she just erupts into nothing but blades. Like, all of her skin explodes, and she's just a pile of, like, flaming blades. And you fight each other for a while, and then you are able to best her.
Yeah, you actually win the sword fight, which wild to me. I don't know how you won.
You are also doing this only with that one knife.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which
You become the blade as well. You study the
yeah.
blade.
Mhm.
And which princess made the biggest impression on you?
Oh boy. Let's see. Let me look at the list. The razor is the one that we just talked about. I think one of the other ones that is interesting is the beast. Did you ever get this one?
I didn't.
Which one is the beast? Remind us.
The beast is I don't know what triggers this. I think this is if you attack her from behind or something. And then the next, I think you get into a fight with her. She kills you because she's always killing you. And then when you come back, the cabin is like a overgrown, like there's jungle in it. Like you go downstairs and it's like a cave sort of thing. And then she has become like a large cat-like creature who, depending on what you do, will either attack you or will eat you. You can avoid this in some of the choices in order to not get eaten. And then you were like in a fight with a creature. I don't know how to describe her. Kind of like a lion. She eats you. She tries to get out of the cabin because if she has you inside of her, then the cabin will be like, "Oh, you could just go. You're not the princess." And then she, I guess, I don't know if she gets out or she can't get out. But you die because you're in her stomach and you get dissolved by stomach acid. And so that's certainly one of them. And then the follow up to that, chapter 3, she's even more bestial. And you're like, I'm gonna have to fight her off. And you can do like a hiding in the bushes. There's like a giant cave, and then you can tire her out. I don't know. There's a interesting dynamic with that one, in that now you have to like save yourself, because you are now the prey. Yeah,
That's
so,
interesting.
Yeah, so that was an interesting one. What do you think, Gino? What did you like?
So one of them that stuck with me was, if you try to just leave instead of slaying the princess,
Yep. This
the
one's
narrator will say, "Oh, you leave, you walk away from the cabin. Oops, it brings you right back to where you were before." And then you can go, "Okay, I go away, and I'll keep doing this forever." And he's like, "Okay, I can do this forever too." And then you can eventually, he's going to be like, you have to go to the cabin. And you can be like, "No, I can't. I could go nowhere instead and just stand here." And then the narrator goes, "Okay, time passes forever, infinite time. You travel all these pathways, and nothing happens. But time is still happening." So you then jump to run 2, because I guess you die of old age or something, or the narrator kills you. And now there's infinite pathways superimposed on each other, each slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a visual effect. And then you are forced to go towards the cabin. And the cabin is many cabins all overlaid on each other. And if you then there's just like infinite staircases to go down. instead of there just being one staircase, and you have to choose like which impossible staircase to go down. And then at the bottom, instead of a regular princess, it's a princess made of princesses.
Yeah.
Mm.
She has multiple heads.
Because you didn't make a choice in the first one. In the second one, she doesn't have anything to base her personality off of. So it's just like a swirling mass of princesses.
Of infinite possibilities. She
Yeah.
is, and she will splinter. Like the more you talk to her, there will be other princesses that she splinters into. Eventually, you end up with like 6 different princesses, all being expressed at the same time, responding to everything you say. And that's real messed up to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's one that kind of brings the point. And Pete, you might have something to say about this. Like, what do you think the princess's relationship? What did you think the princess's relationship was to the hero, based on how your first run played out?
Man, the princess's relationship to the hero. I'm not sure if like I had. Obviously, it's like a reflection of your behavior.
Yeah.
So, like, tell you what, let me answer this in terms of answering what I think the relationship of the various voices are. Can I do
Okay.
that instead?
Sure.
And I think maybe this will help get to the princess. So I think this is a game, as many of our games have been lately, actually, about identity. Specifically, if I can use a technical term here, synchronic identity.
What is that?
What is that?
Okay, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Like, there are basically 2 things about identity persisting across situations. So there's diachronic identity, which asks, how do we know that, like, child Peter is the same as adult Peter, right? Synchronic identity basically asks, how do we know we're the same person in various different situations? So, like, sort of, and I'm sure you've all heard the term code switching, but that's sort of a more specific version of this. But like basically we all behave differently in different situations. So how do we then rectify all those different ways we behave and act in different situations into one cohesive identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're seeing in this game, especially with the like various different, like the hero, the skeptic, the paranoid. I forget all of them. But basically what we're seeing is this idea of synchronic identity manifested across these very extreme various situations and into split personalities. So it's basically a failure of unifying them all into one identity. Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so like you are always this host of contradictions in the game, and the princess responds to the various contradictions that your main character has. So depending on what actions you take, the princess will always kind of be a reflection of it. So if you pick up the dagger, the princess will be suspicious of you the first time you see her. If you come down unarmed, there's a possibility for dialogue. If you stab her, she is going to be more violent towards you. If you try to free her, she will be more favorable towards you. If you betray her, like you say you're going to free her, but instead you stab her, she's going to be really mad at you. And all of those different versions of the princess all are born out of those early choices that you make and then compound upon each other.
There's an ancillary theory, too. This is big in communications, which basically says, like, honestly, we don't know how we're going to behave until we do it. So, like, our attitudes are informed by our actions, not the other way around. So, like, in this case, you could say literally the hero's behaviors are creating these ancillary heroes. He didn't know he had this aspect of his personality until his behavior created it.
Yep. And those actions also create the princess as well. The princess will respond to whatever actions you're doing in unique ways, depending on the exact sequence you pick. You know, you end up with different princesses based on those just few decisions you get to make before the end of the first day or the first run of each attempt, which is pretty interesting. How did you find this setup compelling from a game design perspective in terms of handling branching pathways like this?
So after seeing it the first time, I looked up a tree, like a choice tree, and it is fascinating how it branches. So it's like if you're armed, that's one tree in itself. If you go down unarmed, that's a completely different tree that's going to lead to, let's say, 5 different routes from the beginning. And so from there, it just sort of compounds, depending on the choices that you make down each path. So most paths have, let's see, by the third chapter, I think it's branched at least twice. So there's something like 30 different endings, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah. So
It doesn't seem like they coalesce either. Like I didn't see any collapsing back into each other.
No. As soon as you are on a path, you are on a particular path, and there's no way to jump like to a different one from the route that you're going down. Like you can only change the ending that you get. So, for instance, if you start by taking the dagger, and you then rescue her, and then you resist the narrator when the narrator says you gotta stay here forever, you end up with the prisoner who is chained like 3 times, has a chain around her neck.
That's an interesting one. You can choose to, instead of killing the prisoner who is chained all the way around, you can try and free her even though she's chained, and it's like, okay, so how would I free her? Her arms are connected, but also her neck has a lock on it, and it's like, oh, the princess seems to think that like cutting her head off wouldn't be a problem. That's weird and messed up.
Yeah.
And then there's also a spare chain next to her that you can just put on yourself.
Did you ever do that?
If you want. I did.
What happened?
What happens? Yeah, I didn't even consider that.
You get stuck down there with her. You can't leave. As soon as you put the collar on, your dagger flies out of your hand just out of reach.
Of course.
So you can't kill yourself, and you can't kill her, and she can't kill you. And she doesn't like small talk, so she won't talk to you. And you are just stuck watching as the cabin slowly decays over the centuries, until eventually you are out of the cabin because the cabin has decayed to the point of no return. And collapses on itself, at which point you are able to – you both escape without either of you being harmed.
Speaking of small talk, there are a few pathways where you can flirt with the princess.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's your strategy, and one of them is you just give her the look. Like the narrator doesn't get it, and then all your personas like, come on, man, the look. You give him the look. Then you give it to the princess, and it doesn't work.
Did you ever get the smitten voice?
I did. Yes. I did. Yeah. I liked him.
Yeah. Just one of the, like, do you ever watch Disenchanted? No.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
That's the Matt Groening. Groening. I always forget how to pronounce his name.
Yeah. There's a character who's, I think, the inspiration for the voice that the smitten does. Where it's like this kind of grandiose, like, of course we're going to save her. She is our beloved.
The character is Mortimer, and it's voiced by Matt Berry, who you might know from What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
I think the IT crowd. He always does the same voice. It's always very good.
You'll know it if you hear it. So they're definitely riffing on that a bit. That's a total aside from what we were talking about.
I love my princess.
My princess. I'll save you. Kind of.
You must be saved.
Yeah.
Anyway. Got a little Christopher Walken there at the end, but the first one was good.
A little bit.
Okay. Sorry. I'll workshop my Matt Berry impression.
See what you can do about that. Pause this episode, work on your Matt Berry impression, then play...
Slay this princess.
Slay the princess.
Stanley Parable.
Read
up on synchronic identity theory, too, if you have the time.
And look, if you're bored, watch Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, a great show with
Oh.
Matt Berry in it.
Anyway,
But yeah,
what were we talking
I
about?
like the smitten. I liked you can just have the princess fall in love with you and
Mhm.
like be nice to you.
Oh my God! Hold
That's a
on.
really fast ending.
Did you do that?
I did. Chapter 1 of that one's a bummer.
What happens?
So the chapter 1, you try and free her. So if you just try to be nice and like free her, when you try to go find a way to get her out of the chains or find a key, the door locks behind you, so you can't leave the basement, and someone tosses the knife down to you.
Yep.
At which point you have the knife, and the princess is like, "Okay, if you don't have a key, you could just cut my arm off." And she like starts biting her own arm off.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you cut her arm off, and she's pretty okay with only having one arm.
Mhm.
And then the narrator narrates you into trying to kill her.
Yep.
And you can choose a bunch of different dialogue options. Most of them are kill her, but there's one that's like warn her and prevent, allow her to dodge. And if you basically allow her to not be killed by you, she will take the dagger from you and then kill you, but she does a really bad job of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She does not kill you painlessly. She kills you incredibly painfully. And then you can free her the next time.
Yep.
And if you do, the power of love overcomes all. You can. Her arm doesn't even fit in the
Yeah.
the binding.
She just slips out of it. You're like, she could
Yeah.
have done that this whole time.
And then you can choose to push the door open and walk forward. But one thing that's important that I don't think we've said: anytime the princess leaves the cabin, the world ends. The world does in fact end.
The world dissolves around you, and becomes like just a swirling nothingness.
Yeah. The narrator's a liar, but he is truthful about that.
Yeah.
Gino, going back to the fall in love with you ending,
Mm-hmm.
did you hit the part where she gets like increasingly two-dimensional?
Yeah.
No.
What happens if you run that the whole? Yeah, you
So-
basically ask her like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And she's like, "I want to do whatever you want to do,"
Uh-huh.
and just gets more and more two-dimensional. But I didn't run it the whole way down.
So she becomes basically a pencil sketch, like very rough around the edges. By the time I was doing this, I had already gotten the this is the getting into the end game sort of thing. There's a entity who you will meet. I met this one, I think my third route, because that was when I let the princess out. I was like, I killed you, then you killed me, and now we're even. We're just gonna walk out of here this time. And so this time, at the end of the route, a like mass of hands comes out and just like consumes her. So, and then you talk to this thing that exists in the like swirling nothingness, and you're like, "What are you?" And it's talking through her, and it's like, "I don't know what I am yet. Collect more of these shards, and then we'll figure it out as we go."
Yeah. Yeah, and when we say that it's talking through the princess, it's like a mass of hands that like puppet the princess's mouth.
Yeah, it's
And-
like covering her eyes, grabbing her in all sorts of places, and has like, it's all voice acted. I don't think we mentioned that yet.
Mhm.
The voice is kind of like regardless of what the entity the princess became at the end was, it's kind of like this dreamy, like, this will make for a strong heart or something.
Fine vessel.
A fine vessel, yes. So it's some eldritch horror shit.
Yeah. So this being that you encounter, it wants you to collect princesses for it, create new types of princesses so that it can absorb them. and it doesn't seem to have animosity for you for having killed the princess or created a monster princess. It's not super thrilled when you create a loving princess either. It's like it just wants new experiences.
Yeah.
And it basically says, I've existed in this nothingness. You're the only person I've ever spoken to that isn't myself. Um, let's keep meeting. Let's, finish me so that we can move on or find out what it's like when I'm complete, basically. And this then resets you. And you can go through this process like 6 times, I think. You need 6 princesses to complete this entity. What happens when you complete it?
So,
Nothing good, really.
Pete, what would you say happens?
I mean, this is like, honestly, so the game's been pretty confusing up until this point. Like, you get no
Yes.
rhythm. You sort of understand, okay, like, we're going to repeat. There's going to be different princesses. Once you get your princess quota and this thing awakens, and I'm going to skip a whole bunch here, but high level, bullet points, you awaken to your godhood, and then
The narrator shatters. It turns
Yep.
out the narrator was some sort of
Yeah.
crow creature.
you awaken to godhood, and then the princess becomes the avatar of change and transmutation, and you have to decide whether you're going to basically kill her and save this world without change and no death, and everybody's just alive all the time, or let her live and destroy the world the narrator created, I think.
Yeah, and the narrator you can ask the narrator a bunch of questions, because it's broken into a bunch of shards, and each shard you can ask one question, and then eventually the narrator will vanish. But the narrator basically says there's some sort of construct here. Keeping the main character in the dark would have allowed you to kill the princess and slay the princess and not have negative repercussions. So the narrator wanted to keep you in the dark. And the narrator knows that there are other narrators and other versions of the world, but out of vanity, it couldn't admit that there were other versions. There's a lot of stuff going on. I honestly had a hard time even following all of it.
Yeah, and each time you reset, it's not that the narrator is lying to you, it's that it is a different narrator, but all of them have the same mission to not let you know what is going on. And so, at the end, all of these shards break, and you're like, well, that guy's dead now. And then you go and meet with the princess, who is an entity called the Shifting Mound, and she says to you that you are the Long Quiet, which is the amorphous, like, nothingness that you end up in whenever the route ends. And so you were once part of like you guys were
some sort of
yeah.
You were like an eldritch being. You were a being beyond fathoming, and you are 2 parts of this being, basically, which is why when you take actions, it changes the princess. When the princess takes actions, it changes you, because you are basically in dialogue with yourself.
Yeah.
But it is 2 distinct beings for the purposes of whether this ending, right? Like, you can kill the, what is it? The writhing mound?
The shifting mound.
The shifting mound. You can kill it, and if you do, you are killing part of yourself in order to save the world. You can decide to go off with the shifting mound, and that, I would describe it as entering infinity. There's just a bunch of rainbows and quantum stuff going on. You can fight with the shifting mound. You can go into its heart. There's a bunch of different endings, but all of them require you to get to the shifting mound.
Yes. You have to see all of these different facets of the princess, who we now understand is not a princess at all, but rather a manifestation of just you're an archetypal hero. This is an archetypal princess. Because this is sort of like the story of the world. And by doing all this, either you become a god, she becomes a god, I think is one of them. You can go off together into infinity. You can go back. You can do it again.
Recreate the world.
Yeah, you could make a new sun. There's I don't even know how to describe some of these endings.
Yeah. It's very eldritch
Yeah.
horror-y.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's cosmic, a bunch of cosmic stuff, like remaking universes and celestial bodies. And I think it is worth saying also that like your character's different personas, like the smitten, the skeptic, the hero, each of those different personas are kind of mirrored by the princess, with the damsel, the razor, the moment of clarity, the stranger. There's a bunch of different versions of the princess. So a little bit more just like mirroring. You're getting more splintered versions of yourself. The princess is getting a ton of splintered versions of herself as well. The only ending I think that doesn't involve, or one of the only endings that doesn't involve going to this end zone is the good ending, which Pete, let me explain it to you since I think you're the only one of us who didn't see it.
Please, yeah. I just went to the zone.
If you just go straight to the cabin, pick up the knife, do not talk to the princess when she tries to talk to you at the beginning, walk up, stab her, do not look back at the corpse, and leave. She stays dead.
And then there's one more thing.
Yeah, you try to leave the cabin and you can't.
Yes.
There's just a void. And the narrator says, "You did it. I made you. You get a present. You get to be here forever, and you enjoy it. You love it. And then you can say, 'No, I don't,' or 'Yes, I do.' And if you say 'Yes, I do,' it's like, 'Yeah, of course you would. I made this just for you. It's great that you're here forever.'" And then it puts up a children's drawing of the princess with a knife in her, and it just says the good ending.
Yeah. And it goes, "Yay!" And there's
Yay.
clapping.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, I did kill the princess, but I never went to collect my reward. I tried her pulse, and then she murdered me.
Yep.
Oh, that's the thing. Don't try her pulse. You have
Yep.
to just leave her and be like, she's dead.
That's how you get the nightmare, I think. Or the specter, rather.
Yeah, that's how you get that one.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the thing is that the narrator says that you needed to be some amount of naive in order to achieve the goal that it wanted, and the goal that it wanted is trapping you in the cabin forever, trapping both of you, killing the princess and trapping you, so that these two eldritch beings are basically nullified.
Yeah.
So the world can just go on the way it was.
You did it. You solved change. Nothing will change from now on, including you.
Pete, do you have any theories why it's a bird? Why you're a bird person?
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that yet.
Oh, gosh, why am I a bird person?
Because your character is not a normal human.
Yeah.
Or why the
I'm trying to
narrator is a
think.
bird.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like the metaphor of birds, right? So like there's the whole like canary in the coal mine idea that like birds are some like initial signal. This comes up in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? To all the birds are dead and they were the first thing to die out. There's also like in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, there's the albatross. And like that became like a curse upon the person who killed it. But I mean, it doesn't really seem like those fit. There's the dove in the Bible that like signaled God's covenant, but there's not a lot of God's covenant going on here either, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, it's a crow. Is it a Poe thing?
Could be a Poe thing. It could be a like battlefield thing. So like I mean, we're going pretty far afield here now, but in Old English, like in their poetry, there were basically three things that accompanied corpses. There were wolves, there were crows, and I forget the third. So it could be like a death thing too.
Okay, so I have an actual answer.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, don't let me ramble all day.
I'm gonna save you, Pete. Don't worry, I got you. This is from Abby Howard and Tony Howard, who are Black Tabby Games. They developed Slay the Princess. They did an AMA on r/games Reddit a while ago. So Abby answers, what inspired you to make the player character an anthropomorphic crow/raven creature? Was he ever more human-like in any earlier concept or rating? Or was he always a cute bird guy? And Abby answers, the player's design kind of evolved from making sure you felt distinct from the princess, since there are only two characters technically, and you are supposed to be at odds with one another. It made sense that the player would be a bit monstrous and almost draconian to balance with the ideas of a princess. The bird elements were there from the get-go, especially considering the central themes surrounding death, so it was either going to be vultures or corvids, and corvids are cuter and more approachable. As cool as vultures are, they are nasty and famously not handsome. We had to make sure that even though you're a weird bird creature, you're still handsome in your own way, at least in the princess's eyes. So there you go.
That's good. It's a much more succinct answer than mine was.
Hey, you
Going
did
into
get
the Bible and Old English.
You were getting there.
You got the death part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got there eventually. Can
Yeah.
I, if you'll permit me a brief anecdote?
No.
Yes.
This is my favorite thing that ever happened when I was in grad school. So I was in an English PhD program, as some of our listeners might know. And one time, a very famous comic book artist came to give a lecture, like a pretty big deal in like the comics field. And our professor was a huge fan. So we go to this event. The comic reads some of his stories and like talks for a little bit. And then our professor raises his hand to ask a question. And he goes, I've noticed there are a lot of frogs and other amphibians in your work. Is this a commentary on sort of liminal spaces and sort of transitionary figures in the same way that frogs, as amphibians, aren't really of the land or of the sea, but they sort of exist in this in-between nowhere zone? And the comic just sort of pauses for a second, just looks into space, and then he goes, I just really like drawing frogs.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
My favorite
you just
part
want
of
to draw
grad
some
school.
frogs.
Yeah.
In a way, that's kind of the summation of an English grad school program. Was that the moment when you were like, I'm out?
I was like, maybe this
I
isn't
gotta
for me.
Just reading 7 Steps Too Deep, and then someone going like, nah, frogs are cool, man.
Nah, man, frogs, they look cool.
Have you ever seen a tadpole? Crazy. All right. Any other thoughts on Slay the Princess?
So, Em, I know you had a
Yeah.
literary allusion, if you wanted to bring it up. I mean, I
Yeah.
read the story. I'd be chagrined if we didn't mention it.
Did you get through it?
I did.
You fit it in there while we were talking, not listening?
I did.
How rude. So I was reminded of an Ursula K. Le Guin story. This is The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Gino, have you ever read this one?
No, because I was listening to both of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know who would while we're recording. So basically, the premise is that there is a very lavish kind of utopian society, and there's a long, several-page description of like how awesome it is in Omelas, and then at the midpoint, we find out that this is only possible because in one of the basements of one of the houses, there is a child who's basically kept in eternal, just terrible conditions, needs to be absolutely miserable, and if the child is ever shown any sort of tenderness or affection, the whole town will fall into ruin, basically. So they need to make sure this child is absolutely miserable, constantly, and everyone in the town is brought to see this child when they're like of a certain age, and a lot of them are like mad about this, but they understand that there is a purpose to the child being left in these conditions, and if they were to do anything about it, it would mean everyone has to suffer in this way. And so this seems to be like what our princess situation has been. If she is not left in this cabin and kept isolated, everyone will die. We don't know if that's true. I mean, the people of Omelas are told that this is the situation. Based on what? Who knows? There's no explanation. It's just left as like, that's just how it's been for as long as we can remember. So we gotta keep it the way it is. And then, just to finish out the story, the people who leave the town know what's going on. They know they can't fix it, but they know they can go somewhere else. So they're the ones who walk away from Omelas.
It is.
Yes.
It is an interesting epistemological problem,
Mm.
like, because you can't verify a negative, right? So, like, the only way to know whether or not the princess, or in this case, the child of Omelas, would destroy the world is to let them out and see if it happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think many of our roots, we did try that, and then we were like, oh, and then the world ended. In this case, it's a bit more of a, like, immediate result. Like, the world dissolves as soon as you step out of the cabin. But who knows what would happen if the child was set free, or even given like a bath,
A hot dog.
yeah, like unclear. So
Yeah, this is we don't have to make a political point about it, but there's this like concept called slow violence, where it's basically just like, we off-put, nuclear waste and factory runoff and things like that in certain places, and the people basically there subsidize our clean air and good living, by dealing with all this pollution and stuff. And this is basically just taking all that and centralizing it into a single person and saying, like, look, acknowledge this.
It's like Snowpiercer.
oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that there's a thing like that at the end of Snowpiercer. Those Snowpiercer it's a dystopia to begin with, but the dystopia is very much centered around one kid's got to suffer a whole lot, so everyone else can just live their lives.
wait, is that what happens in Snowpiercer?
At the very
Yeah.
end, yeah.
Oh,
Snowpiercer,
right.
it's a train, and then
You
it
get to
turns
the
out
front of
that
the train, and then I forget what happens after that.
you
They,
need
like, open a
malnourished.
little- yeah.
Yeah, you need malnourished children because only their little grubby little hands fit into this
yeah.
one little hole in the train because it makes goo or something, and they can reach it and pull it out.
Gotta
So,
get
yeah,
that
it's-
train goo.
Yeah, it's a train that runs on minority children,
I wonder what that's a
malnourished
metaphor
minority
for.
children. Yeah,
Yeah, it
look,
couldn't possibly be
Unclear.
anything.
look, just
I'm
hey, you're reading too far into society.
I'm
Just a
sorry.
story about trains, Em. Okay?
I understand. I apologize.
Can't believe
Go back
it.
to talking about birds. Nothing controversial about birds.
Nothing wrong
That's
with
true.
birds.
They definitely exist.
Yep.
All right. Well, if that's our last thoughts on Slay the Princess,
Yeah.
go
Well-
out. Go, hopefully you played it
Yep.
and didn't just listen to this part because it's a cool game.
It is.
And if you didn't play it, delete and then re-download this podcast a few more times as penance.
If you didn't
Rate
play,
and review.
If you didn't play it yet, go read the Those Who Walk Away from Omelas. Play Slay the Princess. Play, God damn it,
The Stanley Parable.
The Stanley Parable. The second one after the Stanley Parable, I forget what it's called.
Was that one mine?
I don't know.
Synchronic identity theory.
Right.
Read
Yes.
that.
Read that. Yeah.
And then come back
and then come back
do your
and-
book report after you've thought about it.
We'll wait.
I think it's now my turn to pick once again.
I believe so.
And, we've been having too much time thinking about games that have stuff to say. We've been spending too much time with games that care about the world. So I'm going to pick a game that's completely out of my wheelhouse, but it is a series that, boy, the people who like it a lot. And I want to know what they know. So I am picking Monster Hunter Rise.
Oh boy.
Oh, okay.
Wait, Rise? Really?
That's what I was told that's the one to pick. But as is
I thought
as is important for the Monster Hunter people, they all disagree about which ones are the good ones, which is great.
How much Monster Hunter knowledge do I need for Rise?
0.
Excellent. That's good news.
It's the one that's on PS Plus. Someone said World was the one I want. Someone said Rise was the one I want. And the people who said it was World and the people who said it was Rise were completely different groups. Em, you are a Monster Hunter person, correct?
I have played some Monster Hunter in my day.
So would you have preferred World?
I would prefer World, but also Rise is 75% off on Steam right now, so
Rise it is.
I'm willing to make an exception here.
I was told Rise is the one to play if you are not a Monster Hunter pervert, and that it plays more like a normal human video game.
I don't remember much about it, but I'm willing to give it a try. But
apparently, most of the modern Monster Hunters play like normal video games. It's really just the PSP original Monster Hunters that play like violence on your hands.
That one was my introduction to Monster Hunter, and it was dog shit. I could not figure out how to do anything in that game.
Yeah, if you say Monster Hunter in front of ZP exactly one time, he will tell you about the claw way that people had to grip the PSP. Monster Hunter. We'll go over it when we play the game. But yeah, that is a game that the series only existed because of train commutes in Japan for a good long while, and then it broke loose eventually. We might need to have a Monster Hunter expert on. So any of the co-hosts or listeners who would like to participate in that, who has a fondness for Monster Hunter, it would be good to have the context.
Damn, we're letting the listeners come on now? That's crazy.
Look, if Braden responds to me first, it'll be Braden. But, if it's not Braden, because I think he might just get mad, because I think he's going to assume that I'm going to preemptively dismissive of this game. So I think he probably isn't listening to this. He stopped listening to the show when I picked Monster Hunter because he was just so mad at me having picked it. But if he's still listening, tell us how this series works. Yeah. Next up, Monster Hunter Rise.
Yippee.
Cool.
Our normal plugs, just a reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. Thank you, Pete.
Yep. Good game this week. Excited to play one I've never played next time.
Thank you, M.
Thank you for once again indulging me in a game where women can kill you.
But you can't kiss them. They can kill you, but you can't kiss them. At least that I could tell.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever get a smooch. I don't think so.
I don't see an achievement for smooching. So
I'm sure
I'm
it's
going
in
to
there
assume
somewhere. It's one of the hidden ones. That's a
Wouldn't the
secret.
world be a better place if there were achievements for smooching?
Most definitely. And thank you, dear listeners. Till next time. Peace.
Break it down.